Hello and welcome to the MyClayCo studio. My name is Carla and today I'm going to be taking you through how to make faux pearls with polymer clay. Now I'm going to try a few different types of clay and combinations of the clay to see how we can get the best results for our faux pearls, and I'll also show you how to get that lovely pearlescent shimmer on the outside. Let's get into it. First up, let's talk clays. Now I have got translucent clay and white clay here today. And when I make faux pearls, I generally do gravitate towards Cernit translucent because it is a very translucent. Whereas as you can see with the Sculpey Primo, it has got that yellow quality to it, which does come out after baking as well. So it will bake almost like this yellowish tone, whereas this one does stay pretty translucent. So I'm going to do pearls in each of these just so that we can see the difference, because this might work for you if you want a more yellow undertone, but if you want to kind of control more what the color will be with your powders, then you might go the Cernit translucent. As for the white, I'm just going to do white just so it's kind of like a baseline. If this is all you have and you can use white, what would it look like? But I also want to do a half-half ratio with my translucents, just so I can see what the difference is when I change that opacity. Now let's get into pigment powders and mica powders. So this is what is going to give that pearlescence to the outside of our pearls. And what I will say is no matter what brand that you have, there are a couple of things that you need to be aware of when creating faux pearls. So I have got Pearlex brand and our brand here today, but whatever brand that you have at home or that you prefer is fine. However, there is a difference in the particle size of different powders. So for example, in the Pearlex brand, they do have a macro pearl and a micro pearl. Now, if you never know the difference of this, you can actually see it on these containers where the macro pearl has like a glitteriness to it, and you can actually see the individual powder particles, whereas the micro pearl, you can't really see that. It kind of like clumps to itself a little bit. It's because this is a really fine powder, and this is great for when you are creating faux pearls because you want a fine powder over the whole thing. You don't want to be able to see glittery particles. And then in between that, we have pearl white, which kind of sits between a micro and a macro. So you can still see a little bit of that glittery quality, but for the most part, it's pretty together. The other type of pigment powder that you have are color changing pigment powders. So whether they are chameleons or interference, basically they're a clear base that then have either a single, double or triple even color mixed into them. So for example, in Pearlex, they've got interference red, which is a clear base, and then it has like red, a small amount of red pigment in it so that it has that red undertone. And then same with the violet, it has that kind of purple undertone. Much like our chameleons, these actually have 2 to 3 colors in them. So for example, like Malagasy, it looks orange, but when the light changes on it, it actually turns purple. So these will actually be very interesting to see what they will look like on our clays as pearls. And I'm actually going to test these ones doing just the chameleon powders or chameleon powders and then topped with a sparkle, which is just our plain pearl color. Now, I'm not going to be using the Pearlexes today because I don't have a lot of these open. I do have ours open, but as I said, you can follow along with any kind of pigment or mica powder as long as you remember that rule of don't have a glittery, large particled mica, you want a really fine grain mica powder. Let's get testing. So I have all of my clay now conditioned because it is cold here and translucent can be a little bit crumbly. It did take me a while to condition. You just want to make sure that when you condition it that you're not getting any plaquing in your clay from under conditioning or anything like that. I have made faux pearls before where I didn't condition my Cernit clay quite enough because even though it feels soft, it wasn't conditioned. It was still a bit crumbly and it did get cracks in it. So you want to make sure that it is definitely conditioned well enough. So I do have my 4 different color variations, and I'm actually going to make 8 pearls in each, because I'm going to do the 6 different pigment powders, both the standard and chameleons, and then I'm just going to leave 1 plain just so that we can have a constant amongst all the variables for each one. And then I am going to do a single one where I just take one of the chameleon powders and put it on, and then put the sparkle over the top to see if there is any difference putting a color changing powder underneath a pearlescent powder. All right, so I'm going to roll these all up and then stick them all on my pins. Forming pearls is actually really easy, and you don't need any special tools. Because pearls come in all different shapes and sizes and are organic, we don't really have to aim for perfect spheres. So once you have the shape that you want, you can then use a ball tool or something similar to make it look even more organic depending on the final look that you're going for. I will say one little tip that I have for you if you're trying to get even looking pearls is that you can weigh out the little bits of polymer clay so that you can get a nice even size for your pearls. So I'm on to my last pearl, and just interesting, while I've been making them, the one that was just the normal like white polymer clay and the one that is a mix with white and translucent actually is harder to get a nice smooth edge all over the pearl than the translucents. The translucents just seam really well, whereas you can see like on your clay, if you've got any of these like fold bits, I'll just quickly show you the easiest way that I found to make a nice organic sphere is to actually seal up all of those, make it almost like a cube type thing, and then roll it, and you'll get this kind of egg oval shape, and then you press down top and bottom and you'll get this kind of organic looking sphere. All right, so now that I've got them all, I just have to stick them on the pins. So the way that I'm going to put them on the pins, very simple, is I just go into a spot where I think it's in the center, and then I'm going to push through on the other side. And I want it to sit down at the bottom of the pin. And then if I see any creases on the pin, like this one here, I'm just going to smooth them over. And I'm going to repeat that on all of the others. I have all of my pearls here. I will say that the 2 translucent ones were very easy to get onto the pins, and they didn't really have any clay come off as the pin was pushing through, whereas the 2 that had the normal Sculpey Primo in it did. Kind of have a bit of difficulty with that. So from a ease of working with standpoint, I do prefer the translucents over the standard white or white mix. But yeah, it'll all be personal preference. I am now going to get my brushes so that I can brush the first one, and then I think I'll move through getting all of the powders onto each of these, pop them in the oven, and then I'll come back with the results so that we can go through what each of them actually look like. Okay, I've finished coating all of the pearls with the powder. Very interesting results. I actually like a lot more of the ones that I thought would be a bit weird or off. And the one that I usually do isn't my current favorite. So I'm going to see how these go after being baked. But they all look pretty interesting, and there's a lot of color variation in these ones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get as much of this powder as I can and use it for another project. And I'm going to pop these ones in the oven, and we will come back and look through the results. So while they're in the oven, let's talk jewelry. So if you do want to turn your faux pearls into charms or other pieces that you can use within your jewelry, it is a really good idea to put those pins in before you bake them. If you decide after you've baked them and you haven't put pins in before, you can still make them into charms and put pins in them. It just means that you then have to drill after they're already baked. Now, this has a couple of reasons why it can be a little bit difficult, and that's you need the right tool. So generally a rotary tool will be easier than trying to drill through solid polymer clay with a hand drill, but also a safety issue. So if you're then using a rotary tool and it is a sphere, if you have a faux pearl that is a sphere shape, then it can be quite difficult to hold onto it and safely get that rotary tool in. So unless you come up with some kind of jig that you can safely hold them, then it can be a little bit difficult or even time consuming if you have your rotary tool on a slower power to try and get it safely in. So I always recommend that if you are thinking that you might want them to be charms, I would put a pin in them. You can also make a bunch at a time so that you can have some that don't have pins and some that do have pins. So then whatever project you need it for, you can just grab an already baked piece and you can utilize it in your polymer clay creations. So it is the next day, so all of our pearls are baked and cooled, and I have laid them out this way so that if you did want to pause the video at any time to get a really good close-up of any of these, and of course see the combination of clays and mica powders, then you are free to do that. What I will do is just go through a few of my findings just so that we're not here going through 32 different pearls. So in terms of like the constants, so our stock standard, which is just the clay without any powders on it, you'll see if I bring them up that we've got white, Cernit translucent, Sculpey translucent, and the mix of the two. Now I actually mixed this with the Sculpey translucent, not Cernit, because I wanted to see what the more yellow-like clay would look like. Now it's interesting in these, when I was working with it, I did find that the plain standard Sculpey white didn't have as easily a smooth finish as what the translucents did. And even working with the white and translucent mix, it made it much easier to get a really smooth pearl-like finish on the outside when it had translucent mixed in it. So if you had white, I'd say you can use that, but it's probably not my preferred. And as for the colors, the Sculpey translucent, also probably my least favorite. Like it's very, very yellow, much more like a amber type color than a pearl. And you can even see, like I did a lot of conditioning on that, but it's very prone to plaquing. So you can see the plaquing in that one. Whereas the Cernit translucent, it's beautiful, creamy, really nice smooth texture, and it's not fully translucent because it is thicker ball of clay, but it's just got that kind of organic translucency that you would get from pearls. So in terms of the actual clay, I would ditch the Sculpey translucent and ditch the plain white, and I would go for one of these two options. So the Cernit translucent or the mix of white and a translucent clay. So looking at all the rest of the pearls, you can see these Sculpey translucents are all very yellow. Now, you're not really going to find a pearl that's that yellow, but you could probably get away with the ones that I did where I put the wheat pigment powder on it, and the one where I mixed wheat and Panther Chameleon. So the wheat pigment powder did a lot of heavy lifting on these ones because you can see they're the most kind of pearl-like out of all of the more yellow Sculpey translucent ones. I think the wheat is what actually garnered my favorite results, and they were in the Cernit translucent and even the mix of the translucent and white. So this one is what I usually do. It looks like a pearl. So this is Cernit translucent with wheat pigment powder, and you can see it's like got that nice pearlescent. You can't see any glittery sparkles. It's got a nice creamy buttery yellow to it because of that wheat color that we used. So it's just a really beautiful pearl color. So if you want to, run-of-the-mill pearl, this is probably your best for faux pearl options. And again, in the mix of the white and the Sculpey translucent, again, it looks quite nice. Not as smooth a finish on this one, but it has got that kind of like creamy, buttery yellow to the pearl. Interesting ones that I found were the Malagasy, because it is quite an orange powder, so that even on, say, the Cernet, it did go quite orange. And it's got kind of a semi-purple sheen to it because of the type of pigment powder it is. So these ones are a little bit too orange for my liking for general pearls. And I did find it interesting that Sparkle Sparkle was okay, but it's very, very like pale white. So I probably would say it hasn't got the nice like creaminess that pearl has. If you can see, I don't know if you can see on camera, this one just has that extra depth and creaminess to it because it's the wheat rather than the Sparkle Sparkle. But both could pass. So if you did have a Sparkle Sparkle or say a micro pearl in the Pearl X powders, then that would be your results. And they are still quite nice. They're just not as realistic looking as if you were to put a slightly yellowed pigment powder on it. Now, some of the other color changing ones which I found quite interesting were the Panther. Had a really like blue sheen to it. I think this would look really good if you had black pearls where they do have that really like blue purple sheen to it. On a standard pearl, I don't think it sit quite right by itself. You can see there the blue. But it did actually look quite nice when mixed with the wheat. Again, the wheat did a lot of heavy lifting. So you can see it just kind of like adds that creaminess to it rather than it just being a very blue sheen. But now I'm going to show you how to turn them into charms. We have the pins in them. I'm just going to grab my looper tool and we're just going to add a loop to it so that we can use it in any of our polymer clay creations. Okay, so I've got my pearls here, so I'm just going to pop them to the side. And I'll pick one out and I'm going to turn this one into a charm. So I'll grab my one-step looper. Now, looper tools, one-step loopers, they've been in the jewelry making industry forever, very, very long time. We've got some sets of one-step looper tools now, so I'm just going to be using those because I have them on hand. I've got a 2.25 millimeter looper tool, and all I'm going to be doing is popping it in place, looping that one. Now I'm going to make this one closed loop. So I'll just push that a few times, close the loop, and there we go. That is now a fully completed pearl charm. So I can use that for any of my creations. If I want to attach it as a dangle piece or just have it as a standalone earring pearl, it's ready to go. Now, because these are covered in a mica powder, I do want to seal them on the outside. My sealant of choice here is just a Sculpey satin or gloss glaze. I didn't really want to put a UV resin over the top because that might bulk out around the outside a little bit too much with that gloss. So just a nice thin coat to make sure that that powder isn't going anywhere, and we are done. I hope you enjoyed the video and that you feel inspired now to make your very own faux pearl creations. If you did have any questions or comments about the video, you can always pop a comment down below. And of course, like and subscribe to keep seeing wonderful polymer clay tutorials from us. We'll see you next time.